Tennessee at Florida.
What,
I
this was weird. Was it not a weird game? I just thought it was weird. I mean, that second quarter was big time, obviously, for Florida. Well, they scored 26 straight unanswered right after the
the first
opening
half
touchdown
was
for.
it was utter annihilation. It is what it was. Joe Milton, he just looked meh, And honestly, Graham Mertz, Graham Mertz did fine, but he didn't have to do much, right? Florida ran the ball really well. We talked about like Florida's actually able to run the ball in Tennessee, that this could be a problem. In terms of our picks, I did pick Florida's +6. I also picked them to win for this upset game. For the reason, well, I thought also more like it's possible, right? If they get into a dogfight, that Joe Milton's going to make the mistakes, right? And it's not so much that Joe Milton like made the mistakes, if catch my drift there, but it's like he didn't make the plays either, and they didn't really run the ball effectively, and their defense was not anywhere to be found. So I'm not saying like I think a lot of people are back on the Florida, quote unquote hype train. I'm not ready to get all the way back there yet. I think the Swamp is just a really tough place to play. I think Tennessee's not all that's meant for all that it's shaped up to be. I think they when do you send in Nico at any point this season? If you continue to struggle with Joe Milton, or you're just not getting the production that you thought you would get out of him, do you go to what point do you go to Nico? I mean, is that an overreaction? That might be an overreaction to say that, but like these last 3 games, right? These last 3 games, they've come out desperately slow. Desperately slow. Virginia, desperately slow. Austin, PA, desperately slow. Florida, desperately slow. But guess what? This team capitalized on that. And then all of a sudden you're down. And then all of a sudden Joe Milton has too much on his shoulders. He can't lift the entire world. But he can throw 90 yards, right? So he's, I don't think Joe Milton's a bad quarterback. It's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say like NFL scouts should think we're watching this game. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I do. I will say, I don't think you can blame it all on him, but in terms of the mistake he made, I mean, I know it was tough. That interception wasn't necessarily his fault, right? He got hit as he threw. It was a duck.
It was weird.
But
it was a weird pick, but yeah.
It was weird, yeah. But he also had a guy wide open, streaking across the field. Instead, he tried to throw the deep ball. He had a guy streaking wide open. And I'm not going to pretend like I know the exact reads of each play that Tennessee has. But again, that's frustrating for Tennessee and Joe Milton. And then that was 7. It was 12-7 at that point. You could have gone down and scored and taken the lead, or at least kicked a field goal and stopped the bleeding. Instead, Florida, 3 plays later, boom, in the end zone. And then he went 3 and out, and then he gave up another touchdown, and then it was 26-7, and the game was over. And Florida hadn't even sent out their punter yet. So, like, that was the thing. In an environment, like you said, like the Swamp, that's a recipe for disaster. They had no chance to win that game in the second half. But a huge for Billy Napier, regardless of how good you actually think Tennessee is or how good you actually think Florida is this year. You got a big time win in the Swamp. You beat the number 11 team in the country, right? They're obviously way too high for that. They didn't play like it. But for some guy who's caught a lot of heat, right? First performance on the field, and then prior to this year, recruiting wise, this is big time momentum. This is big time momentum. After the dud you laid at Utah, I get it. Not an easy place to play. Utah is really damn good. You're obviously not that good yet. This was big time. This was awesome. And I was impressed with Graham Mertz. I thought he made a couple of really nice throws under pressure, took some hits. He's not anywhere what people think he's going to be. He's not going to be Joe Burrow right from here on out. But yeah, they can win some games in the SEC East with Graham Mertz. And that running game, which they finally got going, which they didn't do against Utah. ETN is awesome. Montrell Johnson, awesome as well. Even though he didn't play great, but those guys are pretty darn talented. ETN played great. But Montrell didn't have the numbers quite that ETN did. What's wrong with
Yeah,
Tennessee though? What's their problem? Was Hendon Hooker that good?
I think.
The
Well,
tackles they lost were they like I mean Florida got pressure under Milton, I thought,
I
but
do think losing Alex Golish to South
yeah,
Florida. I think as much as I wanted to think that this was Josh Heupel's offense, and I guess it kind of is, but like I think having a guy like him in that room, I think it's also kind of having an impact a little bit here. But I don't know. I was really high on Joe Milton. I was very close to drafting him in our like fantasy quarterback draft that we had. Said I went with Carson Beck, who himself is not playing insane, but he is doing fine, winning ball games. But yeah, this is a weird game. I thought Florida played awesome. I thought they did what they needed to do. They executed. But I think if they played this game again in Neyland Stadium, I don't know that I would pick Florida at all. But Florida did what they needed to do, and they did it early, right? And maybe they were in a little bit of cruise control there in the second half, but guess what? They got the job done. So huge win, like you said, from Billy Napier recruiting. I tweeted out after the game. Not following us, follow us on the Redshirt Soft on Twitter. The biggest winner of this game was Florida recruiting, for sure. I think. Obviously Billy
2024
Napier.
Florida
Yeah,
next year's
2024.
team.
Yes, definitely. Well, yeah, and even like some, you had a couple guys decommit. I mean, this past couple of weeks. So I think maybe 2 guys. Not that those guys were like a giant deal, but it definitely felt like the momentum had kind of stopped there with after these first 2 weeks. But yeah, keep it going, Florida. Keep it going. So, Graham Mertz, I know we dragged your name underneath the mud, and maybe we weren't right to do that. I mean, we're not wrong that, like, so wrong that Graham Mertz is playing like at an elite level, but he's impressed me because my expectations for him were pretty low. So he has impressed me though. So I'd say keep it going, Florida. Keep it going, Florida.
Yeah, I will say, looking ahead for Tennessee, as a guy that took their under, right? I pounded the under in our SEC breakdown video. This feels great. I mean, I did not consider that this was going to be one of those games for them to really lose, but their crossover games are Alabama and A&M, and I know neither of those teams have really impressed you, but those are not easy wins at all. And then you get UTSA next week. I know Tennessee's not going to be very pumped up to kind of get back out there and avenge this game, but UTSA is not a terrible team at all. They've had success the past couple of years in the CUSA or in the American now. But yeah, I mean, Tennessee, if they're not careful, they can end up 6-6, 7-5. But as for Florida, you got a chance. And I didn't think they were going to make a bowl game this year, but you get Charlotte, right? You get at Kentucky, tough game, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, before you head to Georgia. And after you get to Georgia, your schedule really picks up. You got to play Georgia, LSU, and Florida State. Not in consecutive weeks, but just in the back half of your schedule. So to pick up this win here after losing to Utah, big time. Very big time for them. Happy for Billy Napier.
Yeah. Tennessee, UTSA next week. If Frank Harris is healthy, I think UTSA can win that game. If he's not healthy, I don't think they have a chance to win that ball game, right? Although UTSA has been shown that they can kind of run the ball a little bit, but it was glaring when they played Army. What was that, Friday night?
Yeah.
Friday night when they played. It was glaringly obvious that offense was a lot different without Frank Harris.
Agreed. And they beat a Texas State team, and this is not a Texas State or a UTSA segment here, but they beat a Texas State team that's done pretty damn good this year so far. They beat Baylor. They put up 70-something on Jackson State. TJ Finley, Dog, Malik Hornsby, 2 former SEC West guys for Texas State there. So happy for those guys, the Bobcats over in the CUSA. But yeah,